Hi, so I'm Wendy Sweet. I'm the Executive Director of the Boulder Mountain Bike Alliance, and thanks so much for coming out to our first ever bike theft webinar with the Boulder Police. I'm a little sad that this is necessary, but super stoked to be hosting Officer Mitch Trujillo for a great session on bike theft in the City of Boulder and best practices for protecting your own bikes. Officer Trujillo has an awesome presentation, and thank you to those who pre-submitted questions beforehand so we knew which topics you wanted to see covered. Please feel free to type questions in the Q&A box and we'll answer as many as we can. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce Officer Mitch Trujillo. He was one of the original Boulder Mountain Bike Patrollers way back in the day and is now Boulder Police's Community Service and Crime Prevention Officer. Officer Trujillo.
Thanks, Wendy. I appreciate that introduction. I couldn't have said it any better than that. Hi, group. Thanks for having me, and thanks to Wendy and to BMA for hosting this presentation. And BMA has been an awesome organization whose support I truly value, and they've always been stalwart of our police department. I'm going to turn off my radio, my pack set over here, so I'm not broadcasting everything. So as I said, my name is Mitch and I'm the Community Services Officer. I like to say, think nice bike cop. And I've spent over 28 career years on the bike, on the hill in the downtown district. I'm a bike lifer with credentials that I'm here to explain some things to think about what I know about bike theft here in Boulder. I'm not the authority on this stuff. I'm just someone who has been around the block once or twice. And I also introduced some surprise guests. There's Brian Lilly from Bike Index. Brian Hansen and are with Bike Index. Brian is the head honcho. Lily is the head person. And Lily, I think, may be joining us late, but I want to welcome you. Brian, would you like to say a few words? It's not just a database, is it, Brian?
No, definitely not. We, over the years, our role has sort of shifted from just, get the data out there to sign up with partners, to work with retail partners, to we're working with a lot of law enforcement recently. We're collecting a lot of intelligence that we're passing on to law enforcement and around other interested parties. We talked to a lot of bike shops who are unfortunately the subject of robberies and thefts and other sort of affiliated crimes. So our workload is only going up, sadly, is what I can say. I did want to say, Mitch, your audio is really weird there. Maybe the last 30 to 45 seconds of what you were saying, you might want to recap that because it was super choppy.
How am I coming through right now? Better. Oh, good. Okay. Yeah, I just toggled a few buttons. I started pushing buttons here, so I think it worked out. Well, thanks, Brian. I appreciate that, and hopefully we'll be able to have Lily join us here in just a little bit. So my contact information and other useful contact information is posted at the end. There's a bunch of links, and I'll go over those when we get there. This presentation will focus on bike theft in Boulder and our initiatives to prevent it. For all other concerns outside of bike theft, feel free to reach out to me after the meeting. And of course, I'll have my contact information there at the end. Lean back and enjoy with a beverage if you have one. In case you were out, a bike boom during the pandemic resulted in a shortage of bikes nationwide and an increase in bike thefts. Bike thieves are on a roll in Boulder County, and on campus. Bike theft is a thing. Crime prevention specialists like me are uniquely positioned to be a resource to agencies that are experiencing bike theft and in a prime position to support bicycling communities. So who better to inform the public on such matters? I hope to introduce a variety of initiatives and options in this presentation to decrease bike theft so that you'll be able to use and put forth to inform others. There's no silver bullets, just some options, some advice, and but maybe common sense advice. I'm not here to cop-splain. I'm not here to bike-splain to anyone who knows more than I do. This is for your engagement, and we can prevent bike thefts from getting stolen. Please make sure to check with your local law enforcement about what services they might provide. They may not have a community services officer. They might not have a crime prevention officer on staff. Okay, so we're on the second slide. And I need to advance. All right, so why steal? So most offenders steal bikes to trade for cash. That often goes to their drug fix. That has been happening here in Boulder, but some just want to joyride and abandon the bike. Bike theft continues in our community, often victimizing people without disposable income. So people have a hard time replacing that bike when it gets stolen. Many bike advocates tried to educate the locking of bikes and encourage people to register their bikes, but the issue remains. This is a nationwide problem. A big portion of the problem is people, honestly, people still leaving their bike unattended for far too long, improperly locked, with an inferior lock, or not locked at all. They're still leaving the garage doors open. Burglars are making their way into unsecure homes and storage areas to steal valuables like bikes. People are still leaving their bike unlocked on their car-mounted rack. In some cases, the bikes are pilfered, having been locked with an easily defeated cable lock, or removing the bike and rack altogether. Some other issues. Less than 25% report their bikes as stolen to the police. That's an issue. Chop shops spring up and are investigated if they're reported. And we have a link at the end to report chop shops if you want to do that, if you're able to do that. It is helpful. Officers run serial numbers and check matching descriptors in bike index, though less than 1% of the bikes found during camp cleanups are reported as stolen or are registered. We're still running bikes every time that we have a cleanup, and we're starting to see a bike maybe every time we do a cleanup. But it's not very frequent, like I mentioned. Due to the strains from the pandemic on the justice system, even if the culprit is caught, they are often just issued a ticket and released. And the problem with that is simply because of the pandemic. And we've had a number of restrictions placed on the jail population. So infecting the jail population is something that the sheriff doesn't want. So some of those restrictions are starting to ease up, but as things go right now during a pandemic, that could change, and the restrictions could get that much more difficult. Our officers are still doing amazing work though, and making contacts and checking serial numbers and conducting arrests of bike thieves and are recovering bikes, even during our officers shortage. Our public information officer has put out periodic posts on social media and with the news outlets to help educate the public on the problem. Next slide. Okay. So what are you willing to do to keep your bike safe and secure? Well, you remember Pee Wee Herman? Well, he still had his bike stolen. Spray paint and sticker your bike to make it less appealing? Well, I don't know. First, get insurance for your bike, register it, and then be present in your surroundings and learn about safety when you're on your bike. Do not confront a bike thief alone if you can help it. If you see something suspicious, you're in a public place and you're willing, approach and ask about the bike. But you're gonna have to be really careful, maintain a safe distance, try to reason with the thief if faced with a confrontation. Do not set up a meet by yourself after finding your bike on Craigslist. try to work with your local police department. Feel free to keep an eye out on social media though. And if you come across your bike that was stolen, call your call your respective dispatcher. It may not be the City of Boulder if you don't live there. And if you're positive and you can prove it's yours, then talk to the dispatcher and explain what's going on. For Boulder, it's 303-441-3333. That's the non-emergency dispatch number. We'll go through a little bit more of the reporting protocol here in just a moment. We obviously recommend you not meeting with a suspect without the police present. You have to weigh the risks. There's a helpful link on Bike Index entitled Bike Safety Tips for Recovering Your Own Bicycle. You'll want to look there. If there's a time at the end, I'll open it and show you around. For anyone buying from Craigslist or other online market sources, you're going to need to know the risks. You're going to need to do your research. If you buy a bike that's stolen, you may end up out money and the bike. So we'll get into that here in just a moment. Denver Stolen Bikes Facebook page is another recovery option. They portray themselves as stolen bike sleuths, not vigilantes. They purportedly help you recover your stolen bike. I applaud that initiative. We are only able to endorse using law enforcement, not civilians, due to the risks involved. But on the plus side, the group, we were willing to work with them because they are actually pretty good witnesses when it comes down to it. Is Courtney from Denver Stolen Bikes present in this? Raise your hand, Courtney, if you're there. Oh, there she is. Good. Yeah, awesome. Nice. So she has her hand raised. All right. Well, thanks for attending. Do you want to say a few things, Courtney, about Denver Stolen Bikes? I don't know if we can give her the option to speak. Maybe not. Okay.
There's quite a few people here from.
I'm
Yeah,
pulling her up
probably.
real quick.
Yeah,
I'll get
okay.
her up in a sec.
Okay, yeah, just let me know. Yeah, that'll be cool. All right. All right, thanks for attending, Courtney. Bike Index has a blog entry on their site about groups like Denver Stolen Bikes. So there's a lot of different groups like that that have sprung up. And they're very good about vetting the type of people that are involved with the group. So anyway, next slide. Or actually, stay on that slide, I think. Yeah. Okay, yeah, let's stay here. All right, I'm going to describe this image here in a moment. Let's talk about car smash and grabs. Say you stole your bike in your passenger compartment. The things you're going to want to do is you're going to want to try and keep your car highly visible. Park near other people in an area where there's a lot of people. Go for busy lots where there's plenty of pedestrian vehicle traffic. If you'll be away from your car after dark, park in a well-lit area or near a lamppost. You'll want to choose a lot with an attendant over one without, if possible. They discourage thieves by making your car a harder target and less desirable. Lock your doors, roll up your windows, activate your security system if you have one, consider window tinting. Obviously you're going to want to obscure the valuables inside your car since it makes casing your car more difficult. Again, car smashing grabbers do not normally take the vehicle itself. However, there is always the chance that a key on the dash or in the ignition may motivate someone who's a little bit more daring into outright auto theft. Always remember that if you have a great hiding place for a key, say in your window wheel well or above your sun visor, a thief has thought about that. They know about that. So if you're away from your car, keep your keys with you. I know a lot of mountain bikers, they leave their keys hidden somewhere, and it's crazy because we get a lot of car thefts that way. Keep your garage door opener out of sight. And the reason why is because garage door openers get stolen. And the next thing you know, you get home and your house has been pilfered. So we don't want that to happen. Beware a watchful eye. People case parking lots like trailheads. An experienced thief can follow you and will often stake out a parking lot. They watch they watch you transfer your bike to the rear compartment of your vehicle. So before you even get out to where you'll be leaving your car unattended, move your valuables out of sight. Be alert for signs of car thieves. I mean, if you see smashed glass on the ground, chances are somebody's window was smashed out. If you see the activity, suspicious activity, trust your instincts and don't park there. Never confront anyone yourself. If you're concerned, report your suspicions to an attendant or to the police, and learn more how to prevent car theft and crime in your area. Of course, I'm going to be talking more about reporting, but I mean, in an instance like that, if you see something that's in progress, rather than try and figure out what number to call, just dial 911 and you'll go to the immediate 911 call center. At home, don't leave your garage door unattended or your open garage unattended. We see that a lot. Install the best door deadbolts, front and rear doors to your house that you can afford, and use good bike locks. Lock up your bikes in your garage to, like to something sturdy, something that's fixed. And if feasible, store them somewhere, if possible, store them somewhere inside your home. That's what I do. I mean, honestly, my bikes are too valuable to me, and, I don't have a disposable income. So, my bikes are in an area that is going to be very difficult to access. And so, I mean, yeah, it sounds excessive, but, based on my experience and the things I see on a daily basis, it's well worth it. So, if you store in a shed, you store in a detached garage, just recognize that these are not ideal. They're not safe locations. If you have to store a bike in a detached garage or shed, lock the bike to something fixed or something sturdy inside. Exploit your home to neighborhood surveillance. What I mean by that is you want to open up your home. You don't want wild growth covering up your home and obscuring your home from view by your neighbors. You want to exploit your home so that people actually see what's going on around you. We had to explain that a lot to many of the store owners, the bike store owners here in Boulder, that they had to leave lights on inside their business so that it would illuminate and show all activity inside the store. It was something that for many of them it seemed very counterintuitive. Manicure your shrubs low, keep your canopy high for your trees. Improve your lighting, encourage neighborhood watch. We don't have neighborhood watch programs. We don't sponsor those necessarily, but I do help watch programs if with guidance, and we leave their administration up to them. If you go by transit, if you go by bus transit, if you're bike busing, sit near the front of the bus and keep a watch on your bike. And I see a lot of people that put their bikes on the rack of the front of the bus, and then sometimes they're forced to sit in the back. Usually a bus driver is really not going to argue with you if there's no seats up front and you have to occupy the aisle and hold on. So see whatever it is that you can do to monitor your bike. Regarding the slide image, earlier this year, site security visits, they're essentially threat assessments. They're things that service that I provide. They were implemented at all the bike shops in the city in order to target harden the business and make them less vulnerable to smash and grab thefts plaguing the area. I'm sure you probably heard about this. I think all the businesses I thank them for taking the time for participating in those, and the time and the expense, because some of who may be listening, some shops have made simple changes to their business or the way that they do things. As in the image, one of our bike shop owners installed a glass break resistant film. And this actually did worked really well. I can provide you with a little bit more information on that film, if you reach out to me after the presentation. Here in Boulder, the smash and grabs have stopped. Bike shops have shared theft intelligence and have applied safe precautions about dealing with potential thieves in their stores. So they're doing some really good stuff. Shops report having suspicious people in their stores all the time. I get that a lot. Investigators are continuing to active investigations into bike thieves, bike theft rings, and their leads. And I'm happy to report, you may have heard that the Colorado Attorney General laid down indictments on the suspects in the bike shop burglaries from the last year and a half. So that was awesome, and I'm really glad for it. And this was better late than never. You know, I know that a lot of the bike shop owners were like, you know, when is something going to happen? When are we going to find some resolution? Well, we're on our way to some accountability, whatever that means. This was a collaborative effort between multiple agencies, our agency and a bunch of agencies. And so I'm really happy to report it. On a separate note, we've instituted a camera registration program for the public or for businesses to participate by allowing their camera system be used for the investigation of crimes and incidents. And that's a really good program. So you can always go online to the Boulder Police Department website and you can register your camera. It allows us access. And it only allows us access in the instance of something like a bike theft, some crime. You know, despite these efforts, I have to be honest, law enforcement everywhere has been stretched and challenged. And this has been a really difficult time for law enforcement. But you know, many of us are sticking it out. And so hopefully I'll be able to stay in my position as long as I possibly can. I think it's a valuable position and it's a great service. And yeah, that's fine. So the good news, many cities in the US are seeing a significant increase in bike theft, but Boulder Police reports have declined overall. In the last couple of weeks, I've seen a little bit of an uptick. So you've seen a decline compared to 2020. Seen a decline between January 1 and September 30th, 35%, well below the normal average. And we've seen a decline in the last, as compared to the last 3 years. So as you can imagine, bike theft tends to spike in the summer and fall. And I'll show you a slide to that effect. But to date, as of the time that this the slide presentation was constructed, there had been 541 bikes stolen this year. So, and you can see there the total cost of bikes stolen this year. It seems really high, I know. It's disconcerting, but it's slowly declining. Next slide. And so the good news, many cities in the U.S. Are, you know, seeing a significant, that's not it. Hold on a minute. Oh, the graphs, yes. If you're into graphs, if you're into data, here's an annual comparison showing the time of the year when bike thefts are most prevalent. So you can see where they spike there. Generally, it's, you know, it's going to be, you know, in those summer, fall months. Yeah, so it just kind of just shows you exactly about what times of the year, what we're looking at here. Next slide. And here you're looking at a 3-year average indicating a decline for the moment. So that is positive. We're right outside that normal range, well outside the 3-year average. So that is good. We're hoping to continue with our efforts, and we'll be talking a little bit more about what those are. Next slide. This image shows some hotspot areas in the city of Boulder. And I don't have a heat map of the trailhead parking areas, but my guess is they would show up on a map like this in orange and green. So I don't know if you can see the details real well, but I'll try to describe. The hotspots are where you would expect along the downtown corridor, population dense areas like apartments, where apartments and condos exist, that are rich with opportunity. The 2800 to 3000 block of East Aurora Avenue, the 900 to 1100 block of 28th Street, 5170 Table Mesa Drive, which is a parking garage, 2915 Baseline, the university area apartments. These are areas that are densely populated, and a lot of students, a lot of bike commuters. So you can imagine they're just prime hunting ground for prowlers. Next slide. So what are we up to? What else are we up to? You might be interested to know that Boulder PD is employing several approaches in our efforts to curb bicycle thefts. Technologies, for the most part. This is a typical view of our office, or my office, but I preferred my two-wheeled cockpit, and I'm usually on bike training or doing stuff like that. I much prefer that. Next slide. So in our typical car, we have access to our mobile data computers, and for those people who might want to know where crime is occurring, including police officers, we've developed an online dashboard. Essentially, there's an online open data public dashboard that looks at trends over time, and officers can view their dashboard on their mobile devices, which shows the district map with those hotspot zones and pinned bike theft incidents. They're enhanced, so you can click on the pin and it'll pop up. It'll show you, what type of incident it was, bike theft, burglary, for example, and its case number. And then you can actually look into the actual report. These tools are shared with the University Police Department so that each can view and utilize each other's data. There needs to be, communication between our agencies. Officers are therefore capable of performing directed patrols in hot areas, perform citizen contacts, provide education, such as leaving a bike theft prevention card on bikes that are improperly locked. I'll show you one of those. And then those dashboards serve as a tool for us to serve the public better. And there'll be a link at the end of this where you can actually, it'll show you where to access that dashboard. Next slide. Okay, so bike theft prevention cards, and then Brian, I may be calling on you here shortly. Our bike theft prevention cards are essentially informational handouts. They're printed cards for educating the public. One more forward. Okay, yeah, that'll work. All right, the printed cards for educating the public on safety tips, theft reporting, registration and proper locking of bikes. The ones there that you're seeing, they're playing card stock, they're weather resistant, eco-friendly, easy to place in spokes. The card information has been published on the city website and social media sites. It may eventually be transformed to signage at strategic sites in the city, bike facilities, so to speak, and is used as a coupon for discounted U-Lock at participating bike shops. CU has their own version, which is similar in appearance. So basically an education tool. And I work a lot of different areas, and it's not uncommon for me to carry a stack of these in my pocket, and I put these out on people's bikes, essentially for people that are just improperly locking their bikes or just locking their bikes with a cable lock or whatever. And it's just a means to try to educate them, convince them that they need to get a better lock. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. Yeah, so I don't have in this version, I don't have a closer look at this U-Lock card, but the card encourages using a U-Lock. U-Lock is the best way, there we go, is the best way to secure your bike. Some use the formula of 10% of your bike's worth is equal to the cost of a U-Lock. That's fine. I just say research your locks and just get a good one that requires a key. The card has a diagram showing the recommended method and advice on where to use a secondary cable lock. For those willing to leave their expensive mountain bikes on cars or don't have a choice, I recommend using a U-lock and a cable in a similar way. Add pinhead locks or hex locks, even better. Those are products that are out now that will actually prevent the components of your bikes to be stolen. So you can research those. Use the U-lock to secure the frame to the rail and the cable to secure the front wheel to the frame. If your rack has a locking quick release, use that too. Don't simply display your prized trophy bike outside your car if you can help it. You always want to think layers of security. Brian, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, there are certain U-lock vendors that make guarantees that'll do insurance. I was just chatting with someone on the chat about it, that they they make you jump through a lot of hoops. But there are certain vendors, if you use their particular lock and sign up with their program and provide proof of purchase, and if you are a victim of a theft with that lock, it's they will reimburse you for it. Thing is, it's not they're real problematic. We've had a lot of complaints that people who thought they were enrolled in that program and were not in that program. Which is real problematic. The other one, of course, is insurance. Everybody always asks about insurance. E-bikes, a shocking number of people think their e-bikes are covered by homeowners, and then they get robbed, and their homeowners insurance provider is like, sorry, that's a vehicle, that's not a bike. And there's all these gotchas. So if you are going to be in that range, there are protections out there. You just sort of have to take the 5 minutes and do the due diligence to figure out, like, okay, what do I actually have to do to get in this program, and then B, what do I actually have to do to get this bike that I have covered by whatever my insurance is. And it's like a couple bucks. When you actually do get what you need, it's a pittance. It's like a coffee. It's nothing. But if you didn't realize that disconnect and then you get robbed, then you sort of out that bike in the first place. Those are the two things I would probably mention.
Awesome. Thanks, Brian. That's helpful. As I mentioned, the thing that you're going to want to do is, if possible, remove your prized trophy bike from its gas guzzling pedestal and put it inside the vehicle, and use an old army blanket to cover it up if you can. Don't display your personal effects. Like, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of people will just leave their purse just laying right next to the stick shift, their phone laying out. Remove the temptation. Nothing is theft proof. There are no silver bullets here. On the back side of this card, it's not shown, I don't think, but there is a bit.ly, a dispatch phone number, and a reference to the Boulder Police app. There's a QR code too, to link your device to our bicycle page, and a message in Spanish to use the QR. And we do have it, the website translated Spanish. There's advice on bike parking areas, like locking to a dedicated rack. A dedicated meaning something that's dedicated for bikes, that's anchored and bolted down in a well-lit, high-foot traffic area, and not leaving your bike lonesome for too long. There's a reference for bike registration through Bike Index, and we'll talk about that here in just a second. But finally, there's a coupon on our card. It's an offer to exchange the card at select bike shops to get 20% off of a new lock. A big thanks to the shops and the shops that are present that are handing these out and honoring the discount on Avis locks. All right, so let me catch up here. One thing I want to point out is that the bulk of these cards end up going to officers that are assigned to districts with hotspots. We can provide them to the open space rangers as well, so that they can leave them at the trailheads. As I mentioned, some hotspots include those city trailhead parking areas, but other cards are going to be passed out at events. Note the photo that was earlier with the bike, with the card and the spokes. You can see that the bike frame there, that it was locked. Now you'll have to go back Bike frame is locked to a rack, leaving the wheels easily removed. One more back. Yeah. So you can see, if you're really careful, you can see, if you look up in the top right corner of your screen, you can see how this bike is locked up. Not a real expensive bike or anything like that, but it's somebody's baby. And so, I mean, if you value your bike, you're going to want to, do the little things to make sure that it's secure, especially if you have to leave it for a long period of time. All right, so let's scroll back up again. We like to try to repurpose these cards too. We try to encourage people to hand them to the next person. In between those cards, and right here on your screen is the Bike Index decal. And Bike Index is just one bike theft recovery platform. It doesn't matter which platform that registers your bike, although I'm sure Brian would say that Bike Index is best. But we just want the bike registered. And though we have been impressed, extremely impressed, Brian, with what Bike Index has for our agency in the community, bottom line, it needs to be recorded somewhere. And it needs to be on some kind of a registration platform. The decal can be affixed to registered bikes in a conspicuous spot as a soft deterrent, but I can tell you a lot of thieves in Boulder, they don't care if a bike is registered. But it has a QR code that links to Bike Index and the identity of the owner. And so your current bike status of stolen or not marked stolen, if you run that number or use that QR code with your smartphone, it'll take you to Bike Index. It'll tell you whether or not, it's really simple. It'll tell you whether or not the bike is stolen or not marked stolen. When it says it's not marked stolen, it just simply means that it hasn't been reported as stolen yet. Is that correct, Brian? Is that how that works? Yeah, okay.
Yes, but it's we get a number of bikes that get picked up even before victims realize they're victims. Sometimes we get officers that will intercept bikes in suspect situations, look it up in Bike Index, call the phone number, and the owner's in Hawaii. So just we aim for registration at point of sale, or even from manufacturer if we can get it, just as long as we can tie it to a person. But ideally, the stolen flag does mean that someone has popped in and marked it stolen and provided theft details. But we do pull bikes back that have the owners don't even know yet. That never ceases to amaze me.
Yes, absolutely. The positive thing is we're seeing an increase in registrations to those that are recorded on the Bike Index website. And in Boulder, we have over 14,000 now. It's the last time I saw. So that's a really good positive thing. These QR stickers and the cards are available at bike shops, and many will be made available to our frontline employees who can perform registrations for the public. There's easy directions on the back side. Stickers can be linked to the owner registration with a cell phone. Anyone who passes by and sees the sticker, they can scan the sticker and find the bike's owner contact or stolen status online. Now, some of you may raise an eyebrow that might make you nervous, but more on that in a minute. We encourage groups like BMA to partner with the police to reduce the incidence of this crime by including me at bike events, to encourage bicycle registrations, events like Bike to Work Day, giveaways, trail openings, so on. I hope I can help riders get registered during trail rides and BMA booth events this coming year. And I encourage you to petition your local bike shop, your LBS, to do their part. We strongly encourage shops register and decal the bikes for the new owner before they leave the showroom. Now, okay, so some might resist registration for privacy reasons. I get it. Anyone search bike's description and or serial number on Bike Index and obtain the owner contact information. It has been my experience that those that look up owner information are just trying to determine if a bike is stolen. They are not looking for your information. Anyone who, at least for nefarious reasons, If anyone who takes the time and effort to check a serial number or scan a bike index sticker to get your email or cell phone number isn't looking to fish your info. That's not happening. They're trying to get your bike back to you or looking to grind off the serial number, one or the other. Next slide. Yeah, and there's that back side of the sticker, just shows the instructions, really simple. Next slide. All right, so yes, there's some other tools. I was recently informed that our efforts would be more effective if I didn't reveal any indication that we had bait bikes. So instead, and I thank the person who caught this. So instead, I'll discreetly advise the public the following public safety announcement, public service announcement. We might have a fleet of bait bikes with possible trackers that may or may not be secured or deployed in strategic areas. There might be a mix of high-end or lowbrow bikes. Surveillance may or may not be used. If the program exists, our officers might track the bikes and may be successful in apprehending the thief for you, which might provide more leads or not. And I'll leave it at that. Hopefully that'll set it.
You just described Schrodinger's bait bike. It neither exists nor does not exist. It's in a state of unknown.
Who knows? It could be there. Yeah, so if you're a thief and you're watching, who knows? Officer training. I do provide training to our officers and to officers nationally with the help of a colleague in Oregon, Dave Sanders, great guy, awesome background with this stuff. I'm producing a professional guide to recovering listing bike theft physical indicators for officers, such as does the bike look abandoned? Does it look disguised? Is it concealed? Is it the wrong size in relation to the person that has it? Is is the person in possession of multiple bikes? And verbal indicators that commonly accompany stolen bikes, such as vague or limited or no knowledge about the bike's components. These are things that are really important, folks, especially if you're thinking about shopping for a bike on Craigslist. And I will caution you that there's some things that you need to think about because, if you're thinking about going that route, you're taking a gamble. And I'll talk a little bit more, I think, about that here on one of these slides. The type of training that I provide the officer helps officers recover bikes and get them back to their owners. And, oh, there it is. Reporting your concerns. All right. Yeah, I think we talked about it. So reporting your current concerns may involve several factors. Every instance, circumstance is going to be unique. And initially, you're not going to be sure about what to do. It's important to know the options. If you recover a bike, call dispatch to have it picked up. And we'll run the serial number. We'll check with bike index. If the bike looks suspicious, sure, go ahead and run the QR code if it's visible. I would suggest not flipping somebody's bike upside down to check the serial number because it may not be a stolen bike, and they may not be happy that you did that. If the situation is concerning, unordinary, and potentially harmful, that's when you dial 911. So if you're looking at somebody's bike and wondering if it's abandoned or it's a steal, beware. I mean, the owner may come running up. And so that'd be a case where you want to back off and just say, oh, I'm sorry. I was just checking to make sure that, this wasn't a stolen bike. Should you witness a bike being stolen, please call 911. That would be an urgent matter since you may not have the non-emergency number on hand. If there is no urgency, call the non-emergency number that's listed there on your screen. Or in Boulder County, it's instead of 303-441-3333. In Boulder County, it's 303-441-3333. 4444. That's the Sheriff's Department dispatch. Don't create unnecessary delays in reporting if you can help it. If you delay, there's a good chance that we're not going to be able to catch the culprit or recover the bike. The longer the time goes, the more risk involved or risk of not recovering. So, and perish the thought, but if you fall victim and have your bike stolen in the city of Boulder, there's no suspect information or evidence or video, you can use the online reporting module. And that's listed there at the bottom. If you see a bike like the one in the slide image, it's not here, but if your bike gets stolen, do a quick canvas of the area. So on rare occasions, bikes get dumped not far away from where they were taken. So, if your bike gets stolen, get in the car, drive around, because sometimes they do get dumped right there. And so, and sometimes it's somebody who just took it for that fix, for that joyride, and then they'll leave it. And our officers should be doing a canvas for that when we go out and we meet with you. We haven't seen success with them, but air tags, tiles, GPS trackers, they seem like viable options if you'd like to boost your chances of recovery. Bike Index has a blog with information on GPS trackers. So they've got a lot of really good.
I will say we are starting to see, we've had our first couple of air tag hits and tracks come in. We've had reports of both, the first thing that the thief found and ripped off was the air tag. And we've had reports of, they missed the air tag entirely, and that's what led us to their doors. And the way this technology is going, it's only going to increase. We're only going to see more of these. Tiles, the number of tile recoveries, I can probably count on one hand over the last 5 years. It just has not been as prevalent. Air tags look a lot more viable, and what the system itself is stronger. So I fully expect that we'll be seeing a lot of that. And there are manufacturers now just baking GPS straight into the frames. Stromers, Van Moof, that GPS tracking as an anti-theft mechanism is definitely something that makers, that manufacturers have sort of jumped on, especially with these e-bikes in the high $6,000, $7,000, $8 range.
Yeah, so I do belong to the International Police Mountain Bike Association, which is essentially an organization that educates public safety cyclists the best way to use the bikes. And one of the things that they're doing right now is they're actually looking into formal training for their public safety in terms of bike theft prevention. And yeah, so they're doing that, and that's a good thing, because there's actually building up good relations with their communities, and that's essentially what we want to do. We want to be able to earn your trust. These are just a few things the police and I'm doing here in Boulder, and what options are available. I want to say thanks for participating in this glimpse into what we can do to combat bike theft. And I hope you found the information valuable and are more prepared. Support your local bike shop, support your mountain bike tribe, support BMA, support your bike cops, and send it safely and protect your ride. Here are some links for your research. And Wendy, I noticed quite a few Q&As. Are there some that you want to pull from there?
Hey, yeah, we have 20 comments in here. I think some of them are covered. There have been a couple about the Apple tracking devices, and we just went over that. Here's a question. What are frame and component manufacturers doing to make their products more traceable?
Well, so some components can come with a serial number, and it's up to the consumer oftentimes to actually record these on their own, and then provide them in the instance that you have your bike stolen. You don't often anticipate that your bike is going to be stolen sometime in the future. You just don't think that way. And people are more focused on getting out and riding the bike. And so that's one of the last things that they think about. I think some manufacturers are doing a little bit more about it, some high-end components perhaps, but for the most part, they're not doing much on the components unless you can think of something else, Brian, but I can't think of any components right now that are actually being recorded or
I
registered.
mean, there are high-end carbon wheels that have unique serial numbers. There are individual pieces that have serial numbers. On the whole, as an industry, what we're starting to see is manufacturers realize that they sort of need to get involved with this process, and we're seeing a lot of app creation. So they don't want to just sell you the bike; they want you to use an app. They want you to be part of a sales ecosystem and engage you through this app about your bike. And some of them are sort of keying into the idea that like, hey, theft and recovery is maybe part of this, and that's great. Any manufacturer that wants to combat that problem, help combat that problem, of course. I mentioned makers like Van Moof and Stromer who are baking live GPS. Van Moof has a really aggressive bicycle replacement guarantee. If you have a certain model Van Moof and pay a certain amount of money, if it gets taken, they'll just give you another one. They're kind of the far end of the bell curve, right? The big names that just want to crank out bikes and crank out as many bikes as they possibly can are not doing anything that is super technologically advanced, unfortunately. Me personally, I would love to see the same technology that we put in our cats and our dogs, RFID chips, implanted in bike frames. There's a lot of manufacturing reasons why that's really difficult and really hard. I think that eventually we may get to that point. So you have a physical device that is embedded that anybody can just take a scanner and go boop and get a read on it. We're not quite there yet. Those technologies are real fragile and they don't work with certain materials. But something that approximates that would be fantastic. But I've blogged about this, but nobody's built that yet, unfortunately.
Yeah, maybe Garmin is listening, and maybe they'll jump on board and they'll start chipping each one of us so that when we're out in remote areas, they'll be able to find us. All jokes aside, one of the things I and you touched on it, Brian, is this whole business ecosystem, this whole point of service. And again, I'm going to come back to the bike shops. Folks, you really need to encourage the bike shops to register these bikes before they leave the store. It's so much easier for you to transfer the registration in your name. That way they're registered right away, and you've got your ownership information in that.
I will say, I had someone tell me this week, they brought up this idea with their local shop, and their shop said, it's too much work. And it's like, Bike Index pioneered point of sale integration. So as you're just buying your bike, as they're swiping your credit card, just go boop, and we're taking all that information that's already in their computer and putting it in Bike Index. There's literally no work. There's a lot of misconception, I think, and there's a lot of just like really basic education that sometimes we just have to plow through with partners to sort of get them to realize like, hey, this is actually invaluable. Like, your customer loyalty goes through the roof when this simple action that you did that took you 3/4 of a second, not only gets their bike back, but it gets the guy who robbed their house, who took it's bikes are often parts of larger crimes. And something I see every single day, my entire inbox is, not only did we get my bike, we got everything else they took. They cleaned my house out, they put my bike on offer up. The bike was the only thing that got tracked, but when they popped the guy, when they arrested this guy, guess what? He had everything else. We recovered my entire house. I see that again and again and again, and you sort of convey, once you can get these messages to a bike shop, or once you can get these messages to someone who's in a position where they can register these sort of bikes, and the sort of light bulb goes off, they get it, and it's typically not hard to push it. If they aren't educated on, how easy and how simple it is, then there's often some pushback. But there's nothing, making that phone call. We get recovery 6, 7, 8, 9. Our record is a 12-year recovery. You cannot buy that kind of customer loyalty, and you cannot buy that sort of karma with someone you've interacted with as a business, as a business entity. And quite often you're the first one they're going to come and run to anyway, because their bike's been trashed. it's been out on the streets there, and the first thing they're going to need is a tune-up and some, and of course, you want to be part of that circle, you want to be part of that ecosystem, and sort of,
Absolutely.
and these are conversations that, it's all really basic stuff. And you just sort of, if you're not, most of the people on this call are probably light years ahead of the rest of the universe when it comes to understanding thefts and bike thefts, and some of this stuff can be quite basic. And honestly, the hard part is just sort of like plowing through some of this basic education with people, and partnerships with manufacturers and bike shops and whatnot. But
Yeah.
when you're able to pull these bike-sized needles out of city-sized haystacks, it's amazing. And that's what I'll say about that.
Yeah, it's about customer care, really, when it comes down to it, and it's about taking the time to try to train your employees. I know a lot of bike shops are having a hard time, getting employees that would be able to do this, but it's not hard, like you said. So hopefully we can encourage them from here on, and encourage your bike shops to do it. Any other questions, Wendy?
Here's a quick question for Brian. I've registered a few bikes on Bike Index, didn't know about the stickers. How can I get them for bikes I already registered?
The stickers were originally something we only rolled out to huge partnerships, like, universities that wanted 50,000 stickers and so on. We've recently started offering them on the website, or you can just drop me an email, brian@bikeindex.org. We can get you a sticker. Well, when we do local partnerships now, stickers are typically part of that interaction. It's, effectiveness is about the same as long as your serial is in there. That's great. A sticker and a serial is even better. But yeah, you can pick up the stickers on bikeindex.org. There should be a link in our store now.
Yeah, and if you're in the city of Boulder, you can certainly reach out to me. I'll send you a sticker as well. No problem.
Hilariously, schools love those stickers, not just because it's anti-theft, but it's just inventory control. Schools just wind up with thousands of bikes at the end of the year, and they're like, whose bike is that? So it's the ability for them just to swipe and go, oh, it's this guy, send them a message is very invaluable. It's like a non-theft problem that they were throwing, tons of labor at, that they just have now. They just scan it with their phone and click a button.
Here's another question. Protect DNA versus Bike Index. City of Golden PD uses Protect DNA. Not sure how these databases are different.
Go ahead, Brian.
I haven't heard of that one. There's a bunch of different. There's Cop Logic, there's Protect DNA, there's anything out there. What basically differentiates Bike Index from every other system out there is we're nonprofit. We have an open API, which means if you're in this ecosphere and you want to query serial numbers, you can do so for free. That's how we work with Pros Closet. That's how we work with the world's largest pawn search system, Leads Online. So any bike that's in Bike Index can basically, if it gets taken 5 states over and pawned, it's going to pop up on the radar. We share our data. We are an open system. Almost every other system out there, with very few exceptions, is a closed system. So we see a lot of cities and a lot of police departments, a lot of universities that say, register with us. We will have it on file. But as it turns out, the people who are most likely to run into that bike, which tend to be bike mechanics, people buying on Craigslist, people buying on OfferUp, people in a sort of other ecosphere that is not that small police department or university, our database, anybody can talk to it. Most of those databases are entirely closed. And it's great you're in a system. It just does you no good if someone picks that bike up and takes it to another city where there's another system in place, or takes it, a couple towns over. And as we see, especially recently, these bikes are going all over the place. There are lots of other asset registries out there, but none of them, you can't pick up your phone and say, I'm looking at a bike right now on Craigslist. I want to know if this is stolen. Can I get an answer right now? Yes or no? Very few other people do that. Bike Index does that.
Yeah, so Bike DNA is, as I recall, they use a tile type technology that's in a gel that's applied to the bike, and you can't see it. You can shine a light on it, it reveals itself, and then there's a way that you can check and see.
It's micro tagging, right? And maybe
yes.
How many people have the ability to read that bike out in the wild? It's going to be like 3 dudes in a police warehouse,
right?
Not officers, certainly not average everyday people like myself or people in bike shops, or people that are just coming into contact with lots of bikes.
Thanks, Brian.
Thanks. So it is 8 o'clock. I guess if people need to sign off, they can. Officer Trujillo and Brian, are you okay going a little longer to do a couple more questions? Great, thanks.
Absolutely, sure.
We did have several questions sort of on this topic, so I'll read the first one. There's so many obvious homeless encampment bike chop shops around town. Why is this seemingly accepted with a blind eye? I'm sure something is happening, but I see it all the time.
Yeah, so thanks for that question. So, and you're right, there are a lot of encampments, and it's been really difficult for our agency to try to work within the confines of the procedures that have been put in place. And I will tell you that you can report these encampments online, and I don't think I have them listed here, but I'll make sure that they get listed in the slide presentation that I provide you, Wendy. But yeah, we want to encourage people to do it, to report these encampments so that they're put in play, they're put in line in terms of priority. And you know, we have to do this in a humane way to try to get these people, the unhoused, that you know, maybe need services. We've got a team that does that tries to get them serviced. And, you know, it's tough. It's tough for them. And oftentimes there's a lot of things that are going on, and it can seem really intimidating to you if you're riding your bike by. And for some people, it's really scary because, you know, some of these areas are really dark. And they're not well lit. They're just, and they're maybe, you know, there's not a lot of people around and whatnot. So, you know, report these so that we can get them. And more often than not, we already are aware of them, or somebody has already reported, but report it anyway. And Inquire Boulder is the platform that we have on our website, but I'll make sure that it gets listed in the actual presentation that I provide for Wendy. Does that help answer that?
Yeah, I think so.
I will just say that we talk to many cities in many states, and I have not been in any single one of these calls or talked to any other city where that's, you know, that question and that problem is across the board. Every city in America right now, it is unfortunately a super universal constant. And you know, everybody feels the frustration around this. And it is just an incredibly complex, difficult thing. But I will say, you know, that there's no one magic city where people aren't asking the same question right now. And that's just the state of 2021 in America, unfortunately.
Yeah, absolutely. And I see it now, reporting of encampment chop shops, it's there posted, the link, it's on the lower left there.
Great, and switching gears a bit, we mentioned with the card that you're giving away that there could be a discount on U-locks. This question is, I asked at Full Cycle about this today and they knew nothing about this. Is it a real program? If so, should all shops be apprised of this in some coordinated manner?
Yes, so we're trying to get more shops participating, but it's unfortunate that the full cycle employee didn't know about it. They're actually one of the ones that worked with me on it. So I would say return there and just tell them, hey, David sent me. David is an employee there. He's actually helped me work on this, and just tell him this is a legit program. Ask David, and they'll take care of him.
Great. Also, are any Boulder detectives or law enforcement considering joining in some of the various Facebook groups that have been designated to bike theft recovery? It seems like more stolen bikes are reported within the community themselves versus filling out police reports. It might bridge the gap between community and law enforcement, plus real-time actions could feasibly occur.
Agreed. Good question. And yes, I, for one, am one that is going to get a little bit more connected in this area. And so I know Courtney from Denver Stolen Bikes and I have a meeting, I think, scheduled here soon. And so I hope to be able to get connected in that way. You know, it's difficult in terms of our resources. Our resources are spread so thin. It's really difficult to have a detective get involved with stuff like this. Not that we don't recognize the value, but you know, trying to get, you know, when we're over 20% down in our staff, and our officers, and we're not a big agency. So I think you could probably do the math there. It's just crazy, but we're doing tremendous things regardless. That may be something that I will undertake, and I'll try to get a little bit more involved, at least for the Boulder Police Department. Other agencies, I can't speak for them.
I will jump on in this real quick. The magic sort of formula that I've seen in other cities and other places that works fantastic. You know, everyone in these groups, they're great at spotting. They're great at watching apps. They're great at making matches. They're great at sort of digging all that sort of front work that police do not have time to sort of do right now. These groups are excellent at kind of doing that work for them. And basically saying, look, we've got the guy, we've got the bike, we've got the proof, we've got the police report, we've got whatever. Not only that, like we've got him already talking to us, we know his name, we have his license plate, like all this intelligence that you can basically show up with to an officer and sort of make the case like, look, you know, we've done 9/10 of this. We're gonna go do this meet, or we need you to do the meet. You know, can you help us? Yes or no? That formula has we've seen so many groups sort of basically, you know, if you can meet this sort of criteria, if you can get down this list of 10 things, and we just know date, time, and place. You know, if we have a body, if we have an officer, absolutely, we could, you know, if we can get a resource to it. And it's sort of like that front part of the equation that a lot of officers used to have to deal with. We're seeing groups sort of step up and do that, and instead just say, here's one, here's one, here's one. And of course it varies, you know, by department, by manpower. There's different policies, there's different ways. But what I have seen elsewhere is if you can, you know, one of the magic bullets is typically, you know, we in other cities in the Pacific Northwest that shall be named, you know, if you can find someone and say, look, you know, we've got the guy, we've got his name, and you have warrants on him, you probably really want this one, you know, go. That is often a great way to make it happen. The victims and these sort of groups, these people that are looking at a lot of online sales, you know, there's no police officer in America right now that has time to sit there and scroll through OfferUp. I guarantee you right now. And nobody at OfferUp is going to do a single thing about it. I also guarantee you that right now. That sort of spotting is the bread and butter of the work that these groups can do, and they do it so well. And I mean, it's amazing the sort of details you can pull out. So what we've seen is groups that can do that upfront work, bring this to an officer and just say, look, we've already, you know, we've sort of met the criteria for XYZ. Can we get a body? Yes or no?
Yes.
You know, and if not today, we'll stall him and say, I got to go to the ATM. Let's do it tomorrow. You know, and sort of work that equation. And you know, sometimes it doesn't happen, and a lot of people get that. But what we tell victims all the time is sometimes we don't get them on yours, we'll get them on the next one. You know, that same seller is going to pop up tomorrow, and the next day, and the more information we're able to collect on your theft, maybe you've got camera images, maybe you've got some perfect little detail that makes all the difference here. We might not get them on yours, we'll get them on the next guy. Like, come help us get them on the next guy.
Yeah, we've got a special enforcement unit. We've got plainclothes that out. You won't even know who they are. They're out and some of the act on and very quickly, especially if they're, you know, a big fish, because honestly, I mean, we can get rid of some of the big things that are going on in the city of Boulder, and we can concentrate on some of the more minor stuff. And so we're picking through it. We're making a dent. And so I agree, Brian. It's going to take it's going to take a little bit of work on my part and with our detectives to try and utilize that.
Well, I sound like, you know, a lot of people here like I sound like a broken record because these platforms that are basically profiting, OfferUp is a great example. Facebook is another one that have very little to no controls in place and yet make a profit on this problem, and then turn around and shoulder that problem and just say, well, sorry, here's all this stolen stuff, local police, go deal with that. It's not my problem, and just sort of shunt away and dodge it. Like I lay such a huge chunk of this issue directly at the feet of those services. And they're stonewall. They'll never, they're not going to talk to a guy like me. It often takes local laws changing. It often takes, law enforcement sort of pushing a little harder. But a lot of these services have budgets that eclipse, local police enforcement agencies' budgets by factors of 10. And yet they will spend little to no resources, filtering out these repeat terrible offenders that are on their platforms. A lot of people in this call know exactly what I'm talking about. You see the same guys, multiple repeat offenders get, there even will be police interdiction, again and again and again, and the platform does nothing to remove that person. That's something we've been trying really hard behind the scenes to sort of get traction with, and sort of channels directly to these companies and through various other means. And it's a really slow thing to do. But when we're talking about this problem, I lay a huge chunk of this problem directly at the feet of those services.
And Brian, I mean, you touched on it. I think you and I should talk afterwards. So, there's probably some things that we can do to maybe educate some other agencies so that they can start utilizing these groups and this intelligence. It's valuable, and it'd be a shame not to.
I get that there's apprehension because a lot of the people here have come here, like everyone in this equation has a lot of frustration, myself included. Victims, police, I'm sure the BM, like no one's here because it's a subject they love, right? It's everyone's here, and there's often a lot of hot button fevers, and there's a lot of pent up frustration with the issue at whole. And I think that's where a lot of engagement gets missed. But when we're able to sort of show people like, no, there are good processes, and there's good intelligence collection, and there's meaningful things that come out of a lot of this work, even if some of the people are sort of, there's a lot of frustration to be had all around. And I get that. I think everybody on this phone call gets that. It is, unfortunately, one of those things that you typically only get into and learn about because you've suffered it, or because it's really negatively impacted you. So there's no limit to the frustration that goes around. The only thing that's kept me doing it is sort of seeing the forward progress. Like it's not just giant unconvoluted groups of people complaining about a problem now. There are processes and methods in place, and there's data collection happening, and there's Google Docs with names that, like, there's good work happening. I just call it straight up intelligence collection. And we're finding, the more of that you can do and the more of that you can share, the better off you're going to be. I wish I could say more about this, but there's definitely, some local recent news that may dovetail into it. But a lot of the things that we're learning from victims and from groups and from law enforcement, they're all in the same sphere. We're all talking about a lot of the same operators here.
Yes. And I'm glad they brought that question up, because it really does have me thinking about ways that I can probably improve the way things are done here, and also having maybe some kind of an impact a little bit greater. Are there any other questions, Wendy?
I had one more that was kind of a follow-up I think we should answer. Why are police officers advising to not meet with the thieves that have our bikes? Officers aren't able to show up, and I understand, but what would you recommend when police can't show up?
Yes. And that is a difficult one, because, obviously our emphasis is going to be on public safety. Your safety. We don't want you to get hurt during this circumstance. And, you really, you typically don't have time to plan for these events. You don't have time to meet with me and go over safety measures, to go over our operations plan, because that's really what it comes down to, is really knowing what it is that you're going to do if this happens. You know, we've heard of success stories of people recovering their stolen bikes without the assistance of law enforcement. And, you know, oftentimes it comes down to, you know, I'm on the phone with the police. Are you going to stick around and get arrested, or are you going to give me back my bike? Or they convince the thief, hey, if you don't mind, I'd like to take it for a test ride. I promise I won't steal it. And of course, you ride off with your bike. That's great. You know, I wish I could say that, you know, the cops are always going to be around when you need them. The unfortunate thing is they're not. But we try to do our best. We try to do what we can, and we have had a great deal of success in returning bikes back to their owners. Probably not as much as I would like, but we're improving. So, you know, so continue to support us and continue to support Bike Index and the other initiatives that, you know, are working on this problem. This is a huge problem, and this is something that it's going to take a collective effort. It's going to take a lot of effort and a lot of support from the public. You know, really, I mean, if you value this sport, if you value mountain biking, if you value your trails, if you value all of it, I think to some degree, there's some social responsibility to try to educate other people about how not to become victimized. So I'll leave it at that.
Thanks. And if we could do.
Not to hammer this point again, but I just because it is a daily occurrence and it is a very common thing. You get robbed, you get broken into, there's a crime. First thing you do is find that thing, you know, being sold on an online platform. One of the big things we're really pushing on in back channels to some of these sales apps is like, you know, it takes, somebody can fence your bike in an hour and a half. You know, that's such a short amount of time. Law enforcement often, like, it's just even impossible to get somebody sometimes in that short amount of time. And it's always, you know, it's always shocking to me that a lot of the anger that comes out of that, the anger and frustration that comes out of that experience of watching your stuff getting sold online is directed at law enforcement, not the platform where your stuff is being sold online. It's, you know, and I will circle back that, like, that is such a nexus, is such a crux, is such an enabler of the problem. I cannot drive this point home any more repetitively or annoyingly in this call, so I will stop now, but just throwing that out there.
Great. And then we got two questions kind of related to this. Has Boulder thought about teaming up with Denver police in regards to individuals that might be stealing bikes in one city and transporting them to another? And same thing, the Denver stolen bike page is saying a big increase in bikes being stolen in Boulder and being sold in Denver. How should these be handled?
Yeah, no, good question. Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, I mean, that collaboration of agencies that resulted in the Attorney General handing down those indictments is an example of those agencies coming together. One of our detectives here is an intel detective, and that's what he does. He's awesome, and was heavily involved in this, and he's doing all of those things. So yes, that is something that we are working on, and that's something that Denver works on. They're really good about it. A lot of the other agencies, Golden, some of the other ones that were involved in the bike shop burglaries, we all came together and we worked on this issue. And we're going to continue to work on this issue because, as you can see by the numbers, I mean, it's not acceptable to have that many thefts, to have those totals. You know, think about it. It's having an impact on the bicycle economy. It's having an impact on our ability to maintain our own bikes. It's having an impact on the bike shops being able to build bikes that are sellable. I mean, it's a crazy time that we're living in. So yeah, you know, if we're doing whatever we can to work with those agencies and to collaborate and to investigate these crimes, especially when they go across jurisdictions, they go across state lines. You know, there's been a lot written, and there's been a great belief that a lot of these stolen bikes, especially from these big rings, are going across the border. And so that's concerning. That's something that, you know, our local agencies, we're going to have to come together as a state, and we're going to have to address it.
I will say one of the things that often, especially in Colorado, I speak to a lot of individual detectives and a lot of individual police officers and a lot of people in different individual roles. One of the things that surprised me was how much data sharing there actually was there. We've sent some things on and ping ponged from, you know, Boulder to Golden to like a lot of that is happening behind the scenes. It's just something that a lot of people, a lot of detectives by nature of their work aren't going to talk about. It's just they have, you know, they keep their methodology sort of quiet. But there is a lot of that back and forth, I would say, already happening.
Yeah, and I welcome the question, because I want to know, I want any thieves that are or anybody's thinking about stealing a bike, I want them to know that this stuff is going on. I want them to know that we have all these tools available, and that we're utilizing them, and that, you know, if you're thinking about stealing somebody's bike that's participating in this presentation, don't, because there's a good chance we're going to catch you.
Well, awesome. We still have questions, and I think we could probably keep going another hour, but I want to be respectful of everybody's time. Mitch, you have your contact information here, and Brian, are you okay sharing your information? We can put that out in a follow-up email.
I'm like the most reachable dude in the universe. I'm just Brian at Bike Index. I have like 9 emails. My contact info is everywhere. I'm on Twitter. I'm on, yeah, anybody can hit me up. We have a Facebook page, Bike Index, you know, contact me there. I'm in a lot of these local groups. Again, my email is Brian, BRYAN @bikeindex.org. I'd be happy to field questions from people that didn't get answered here. We have a lot of publications that may actually address some of these questions. Something you said earlier, Mitch, we actually put together a guide called How Not to Buy a Stolen Bike Online that sort of talks about, like, if you're going to go look at a bike, here are some indicators, you know, here's what you need to do. We have a lot of that sort of educational stuff that we put out there, that if you just go to Bike Index and poke around a little bit, you'll definitely find it.
Yeah, I'm glad that you pointed that out, because that was an area that I neglected to get back to. And, you know, that's a great blog entry on that whole topic. And, you know, I did mention it in a different way. A lot of the same things that the law enforcement is looking for in terms of a stolen bike are things that the public can look for as well.
Well, thank you so much, both of you, for your time tonight. Just want everybody to know that we'll have this presentation on the BMA YouTube channel. We'll have it linked from our website, and then Officer Trujillo is also sharing his presentation. We'll have that linked on our website. We'll put that out on all the social medias. So if you want to share this presentation, it'll be up tomorrow. Look for it. And thank you again very much.
Hey,
you're welcome. Thank you
so much. I have to say thank you so much as officers for paying attention to this question. There's so many people out there that think, you know, their local PDs don't care. And, you know, to see a real face, to put a real name to it, to get some contact info, to hear some of this stuff helps, you know, I think more than you realize.
You know, you're welcome. Thank you, Brian. I appreciate that. And thank you, everybody, for attending, because, you know, honestly, we can't do it without you. And I think that we can all, this is all about us. It's not us and them. It's all about us, and we can do some amazing things to try to combat this and make things better. I appreciate everybody attending. Thanks, Wendy.
Thank you. Good night.